What is going on, everyone? Anthony Drew Gary here, and this week we are going to talk about saving for college in general, from the lens of saving probably for your children, or for those of you who have loved ones that are younger than you. We're saving for younger age folks right now, so we've got a little bit of time to let some money grow. And I just want to do a video that would talk you through, how do you figure out how much you need, and how do you back into what you need to be saving to do that. So if I found myself in this situation, I have young children, this is exactly what I would do in that scenario. And so you've got to make some assumptions when you do this. And so I went to the web, trying to find out what college costs these days. And spoiler alert, it's way too much, but play along with me anyway. Personal finance section of Business Insider from earlier this year released average cost data for every state. And this talks generally about state universities. And so you'll have to push and pull a little bit to find a scenario that works for you. But if you go to your state, I live in Indiana, and the numbers here roughly 10 grand for in-state, 10 grand plus or minus for tuition. But let's assume that we don't want to necessarily negate any other potential options. And so let's call that number 15 grand a year. And let's say it costs roughly 10 grand a year in room and board. So you're at 25 grand a year. You ultimately need to save 100 grand to go to college. And the thought of that, as I say it out loud, kind of makes me want to vomit in the backside of my mouth here. But we're going to continue on with this thought process that you need to save 100 grand for college. And so practically speaking, you're probably going to look to do that in some sort of an investment vehicle. Potentially, saving in stocks or mutual funds, something that will hopefully over the course of the next 18 years, if you're starting now or a shorter amount of time, will get you some benefit from return on investment. And so the next thing we do is we back into some numbers using a compound interest calculator. And so, just for giggles, I tried to get myself pretty close to that 95 to 100 grand scenario. And basically what the numbers are telling me is that if I start with $2,500 and I save for 18 years with a 7% rate of return, and that's an average number. So the chart won't actually look like this. It'll ebb and flow a little bit as time goes on. But a 7% rate of return, contributing an extra $2,500 each year is what this line says. And then it says how often will your interest compound? We'll say an annual compound, which is basically annual growth. And this scenario spits out that you contribute 47.5 and your gains are another 45.9. And so that gets you pretty close here, but you need to start thinking about whether or not some of these items are realistic. Do you have anything saved right now? Can you contribute this amount per year? And so when you start to push and pull these numbers, if this ends up being zero, in order to offset that, this may need to be 4,000 or something to that effect. And 4,000 is a little bit too high. You can back into that and go 3,000, figure out roughly what you need to know to get there. And ultimately to start framing your life in such a way of, can I do this for my child? And if the answer is no, by no means does that make you any sort of a lesser parent. It just means that the math does not lie. It is not discriminatory based on your situation in any sort of way. This is just the facts on the ground. And so it can help you inform decisions so that you can start to talk to your children when the time comes about what can be expected. Because transparency in this situation is going to be really helpful, especially when your kids get to high school and you can start influencing, their thought process based on what your realistic situation is. But talking about this a little further is, how many years will you have to save for? And I plugged 18 here. If you've got a 5-year-old, that number is not 18 anymore. It's probably 13. And there's, and that changes the math dramatically. And there's also a thought process here that, do you want to be invested in, we'll call risky assessed type of risk scenarios during those last couple of years in high school? Because you could find yourself in a situation like we were for 2022, where the stock market was down 20% across the board, and you could get really close to hitting your targets, and then all of a sudden just the sequence of the stock market gets untimely for you. And so does that 13 then become 12? And how do you manipulate the rest of the numbers in this sort of a calculation to make sure that you're not setting yourself up for a shortfall? And I don't think it's fair to just limit, you're going to stop saving for college or stop being able to contribute at 18, and that's the end all be all. Realistically, if you have the ability, there's 4 extra years that it takes to get most of these degrees. And if you can contribute to it along the way, that starts to manipulate how much you ultimately need as well. So just wanted to do a quick video this week. I know last week I talked about, the 529s and the Roth IRAs, but wanted to get into the brass tacks of the actual numbers. Ultimately, what you've got to start thinking about and how you might go about calculating this. So hopefully this video is worthwhile to you. That's going to bring this episode of the show to a close. Always feel free to leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you're thinking, whether or not this is valuable to you, what I can be doing differently, and what topics you want me to cover. As always, you can subscribe to the channel, be the first to know about new content in long form each and every Wednesday, and on short form in the YouTube shorts a lot more frequently than that. And if you are looking to transact real estate in the Indianapolis market, I can help you with that. Get in touch with me in the comments or at indydwell.com. Until next time, this is Anthony Drew Gary, host of The How To Show, signing off.